Hello guys and welcome back. If you are new around here, I cover mostly Australian true crime cases and today we are covering another solved case. And this one isn't technically Australian, but it does have really strong Australian ties. Is that cheating? I don't know, maybe. But either way, this case made massive headlines in both Indonesia and Australia. So let's get straight into today's solved case. In 2016, Mirna Salihin was a 27-year-old graphic designer and wealthy socialite who was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. Jessica Wongso, also 27 and from a wealthy Indonesian family, was Mirna's longtime friend. The pair met in 2008 in Sydney, Australia, where they both were studying at the Billy Blue College of Design. Jessica, described as bubbly and goofy by friends she attended college with, became a permanent Australian resident after graduating college and remained in Sydney. Mirna, on the other hand, moved back to Indonesia with her then boyfriend, Arif Samarko. Mirna and Arif eventually married in 2015, just months before the following events took place. As Jessica and Mirna now lived in two different countries, the friends slowly began to drift apart. But in 2015, Mirna took a holiday to Sydney to visit Jessica. The pair didn't exactly get on like old times, however, as you often hope when you catch up with an old friend. During the visit, Mirna gave Jessica some honest advice about her relationship with her then Australian boyfriend, Patrick O'Connor. And Mirna was quite blunt, as she was known to be, and Jessica just did not appreciate her friend trying to be helpful, I guess, because Mirna did have good intentions. Mirna was trying to give Jessica some solid advice. Mirna was honest and said to Jessica, "Your boyfriend's bad news. He comes from a bad scene and he treats you like crap." Her boyfriend was known to rough her up a little bit. I didn't find any more details beyond that, but it wasn't a good relationship, so her friend was just trying to help her out. And Jessica does eventually break up with this boyfriend. Now, after this tiff, I guess, this disagreement, Jessica and Mirna do remain friends, but things aren't quite the same. Mirna's new husband, Arif, says that Mirna was incredibly wary of Jessica after this situation occurred. In 2015, Jessica Wongso's life really turned into a downward spiral. On 5 separate occasions, she attempted to take her own life. In August of that same year, Jessica was in a serious car crash, crashing her car into a wall of a Sydney nursing home. Luckily, no one was hurt and Jessica did escape with minor injuries, but it did turn out that Jessica had been drinking before the crash. Meanwhile, Mirna was marrying her longtime boyfriend Arif in Bali in what was a beautiful and a lavish wedding, and Jessica had not been invited. Not long after this, Jessica was fired from her job from the New South Wales ambulance. And to Jessica, it felt like her life was truly spinning out of control. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, her former best friend Mirna was living a dream life back in Indonesia. She was married recently, fairy tale wedding, great man, great life, and Jessica felt like she had been left behind and abandoned by her friend. Mirna's twin sister Sandy, as well as Mirna's husband Arif, believe Jessica was incredibly jealous of Mirna, and she was jealous of the life that she was leading and how happy she was. So eventually, towards the end of 2015, Jessica made the decision to move back to Indonesia. Not long after returning home to Indonesia, Jessica makes arrangements to catch up with her old friend Mirna and another friend from college, Honey Joeta, for coffee. On January the 6th, 2016 at around 2 p.m, Jessica arrives at the mall by herself. So Jessica, Mirna and Honey all had plans to meet up at 5 p.m. that afternoon for drinks, so 3 hours from when Jessica arrived at the mall. When Jessica arrived at the mall, she made a reservation at the Olivier Cafe, which was located in the mall, before heading off to do some shopping. Jessica arrives back at the cafe initially at 3:30 p.m., 90 minutes before the coffee date, but then leaves to buy her friends some small gifts from Bath & Body Works. Before Jessica's friends arrive for coffees that afternoon, she gives them a text to ask them what drinks they want so she can pre-order them, insisting that drinks are on her that day. At 4:14 p.m., almost 1 hour before the coffee date reservation, Jessica returns to the Olivier Cafe with the gifts from Bath & Body Works, and she orders the drinks for herself and her friends. Mirna has pre-ordered a Vietnamese iced coffee. Jessica sits at the table in the cafe with the drinks and waits for about an hour for Mirna and Honey to arrive. Mirna and Honey arrive at the cafe at 5:16 p.m. Not long after Mirna sits down, she takes a sip of her Vietnamese iced coffee, pre-ordered by Jessica, and she immediately complains to her friends that it tastes awful, both offering them a sip. They both declined, although some reports said that Honey took a small sip, so I'm not quite sure what's true. Mirna then starts to fan her face, only moments after complaining about her drink. Myrna's head then rolls back and she loses consciousness. She then starts to foam at the mouth and an ambulance is quickly called. In the meantime, Jessica actually went and accused cafe staff of poisoning her friend, telling them that Mirna had been complaining that her drink had tasted funny just moments before she passed out. And the cafe, just to be on the safe side, decided to hold on to the Vietnamese iced coffee. Jessica calmly stood by and watched her friend lose consciousness as those around her panicked, including her friend Honey. And this can all be seen on CCTV footage. Honey, who is attempting to assist Mirna, phones Mirna's husband Arif as all this is happening to let him know exactly what is going on. When the ambulance arrives, Mirna is quickly taken away to hospital, and by 6 p.m, 1 hour after the friend's coffee date, Mirna Salihin is dead. And initially, no foul play is suspected in this situation, therefore nobody is initially searched or questioned. An autopsy was not actually conducted due to religious reasons. As Indonesia is predominantly a Muslim country, they don't believe in autopsies. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, that is just from the research I did and my understanding of it. Tests were carried out, however, to uncover the cause of Mirna's passing. Evidence of bleeding was found in Mirna's stomach. And as you may remember, I said a few moments ago that the cafe held on to Mirna's Vietnamese iced coffee after Jessica accused them of poisoning her friend. Well, that iced coffee was also tested, and it tested positive to traces of cyanide, 298 milligrams to be exact. Now, cyanide was also found in Mirna's stomach, not very much, however, and cyanide was not found in any other parts of her body. Because an autopsy was not conducted, an exact cause of death can't be concluded. But of course, cyanide poisoning is thought to be the reason. A few weeks later, on January the 30th, Jessica Wongso was charged with the premeditated MURDER, again trying not to be demonetized, of her friend Mirna Salihin. She was then taken into police custody to await trial. The AFP, or the Australian Federal Police, did assist Indonesian authorities by handing over confidential files on Jessica Wongso's psychological state during her time staying in Australia. The files outlined a restraining order that was taken out by her then boyfriend, Patrick O'Connor, the Australian boyfriend that Mirna suggested that she break up with. Well, when Jessica did break up with Patrick, he took out a restraining order against her, fearing that she would do something crazy. The AFP, however, only agreed to cooperate with the Indonesian authorities if they agreed not to give Jessica the death penalty, as Jessica was a permanent Australian resident. Jessica's former boss, Christy Carter from the New South Wales ambulance, was also interviewed by police for 9 hours, and she told the police some really interesting information during this interview, including the fact that she believed that Jessica was capable of killing or harming another person. She described Jessica as crazy and full of hatred. Christy Carter also told police that one time when she visited Jessica in hospital after one of her attempts to take her own life, Jessica confessed to her, for some reason, that she knew how to kill another person via poisoning. Disturbingly, 2 months before Mirna Salihin's passing, Christy Carter received a death threat from Jessica Wongso saying, "You have to die and your mum should die too." Now, I don't know if this death threat was because she had been fired or not, but regardless, a death threat is a death threat, and it's pretty disturbing. So what I didn't mention before was that on the day of the fatal coffee date, while Jessica was waiting alone with the 3 coffees, just waiting for her friends to show up, there was actually a CCTV camera directly on her the whole time. So this begs the question, did the CCTV camera pick up Jessica Wongso putting cyanide in her friend's Vietnamese iced coffee? Well, the answer is no. There was also a CCTV camera behind her, but that was blocked by the plants. So let me explain exactly what we can see on the CCTV footage. I'll put some footage and images up on the screen as I talk about exactly what happened so you can see it. So when Jessica sat down in the cafe, she had 3 identical Bath & Body Works shopping bags with her, as I mentioned before, and each contained just 1 small bottle of soap. Jessica said she bought 1 for herself and 1 for each friend. She placed the 3 bags on the table in front of the 3 drinks, blocking them from the visible CCTV camera in front of her. For the hour-ish that she sat alone, not much movement was detected except for Jessica slightly shuffling the shopping bags and moving the drinks. Therefore, the conclusion that Jessica put cyanide in her friend's iced coffee can only be drawn by assumption. And Jessica did have a motive, albeit a weak one, which is discussed in the trial, which I will discuss coming up now basically. So the trial commenced in Jakarta on the 15th of June 2016 and lasted 5 months. Jessica's family, who are considerably wealthy, hired a very good celebrity lawyer for their daughter. Jessica's lawyer denied that she had any involvement in Mirna's death, and Jessica herself maintained her innocence throughout. And I just want to reiterate again, I'm a little confused as to whether the death penalty was on the table, because this case or this trial took place in Indonesia, and Indonesia has the death penalty. But the Australian Federal Police, the AFP, only said they would cooperate if the Indonesian authorities took the death penalty off the table. But I feel like the Indonesian justice system sort of just works by its own rules. Not trying to be rude in saying that, it's just the impression I get. So different reports said different things. Some said that she could face the death penalty, others said that she couldn't, so sorry I couldn't find the exact information there. So the trial was an absolute media spectacle, with Jessica appearing to love and soak up all of the attention. She came to court always looking happy and smiling and eager to have a chat with the media waiting on her arrival. The trial was also broadcast live. It was a very popular case that many Australians and Indonesians had a great deal of interest in. The public at the time, however, was very divided on Jessica's innocence. A show called the Live Jessica Wongso Trial Show even took place in Indonesia during the months that the trial took place. During the trial, an autopsy of Mirna Salihin was really pushed, but ultimately decided against, which was pretty unusual for a trial or a case of this size and caliber. At least I believe it's unusual. Again, if you're from Indonesia, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about cases like this over there. And because an autopsy wasn't performed, the cause of Mirna's death could not be 100% certain. 3 Australian toxicology and forensic experts also testified in court that there wasn't any solid proof that the cyanide had caused Mirna's death. But the prosecution argued, due to the presence of cyanide in the coffee and in Mirna's stomach, that there was simply no other conclusion. It was also suggested that possibly Mirna died of natural causes, but this was pretty quickly dismissed. On October the 27th, Jessica Wongso was found guilty of MURDER via cyanide poisoning. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison, so no death penalty. As soon as the verdict was read, Jessica stood up and announced, "I don't accept this verdict because it is unfair and one-sided." She also announced her intentions to appeal. Her lawyer concluded with this statement that this was the death of law in Indonesia. The judges had come to the conclusion that this had been a revenge killing. So you may remember me mentioning a few moments ago when Mirna told her friend Jessica to break up with her Australian boyfriend, and Jessica did, even though Jessica's boyfriend was pretty bad news. So the judges believed basically that Jessica was getting back at Mirna for telling her to break up with her boyfriend, and that Jessica was jealous of Mirna's life, the fact that she was recently married and so happy. Look, to me this is weak, but let me know what you think. To this day, it's still unknown how Jessica got a hold of this cyanide, and there was never any cyanide found on Jessica or with Jessica. But do keep in mind that, of course, she wasn't searched on the day that Mirna died. I mean, you can't exactly just pop down to the shops and grab a bottle of cyanide, so it kind of really is a mystery as to how she managed to get her hands on it. But then again, who else had even a small, slight motive to kill Mirna? And how would they have done that? There was also the fact that Jessica was alone for an hour with those drinks, and the fact that she arrived so early. It doesn't look good given the outcome of what happened, and quite frankly, doesn't really make much sense. Jessica did attempt to appeal her sentence, but it was rejected. So let me know your thoughts on this insane case down below. I'll be very curious to know what you all think. Thank you so much for listening to Mirna Salihin's story. Thank you for being here. Like, comment, share, subscribe, notifications. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I will see you very soon.